Propulsive Story podcast. I am Derek Christopher. I'm very excited. Legendary UCLA Loyola teacher, best-selling author of he wrote a book called Rewrite, and he's got a brand new book out now called The Screenwriting Sensei, a complete guide to writing your first screenplay. Paul Chitlik, glad to see you. So happy to have you here.
Oh, good to be with you, Derek. Thanks for having me.
So, just quick question. So, Rewrite was a big hit. People love the book, and it's
Mhm.
invaluable to a lot of well-known writers. What brought you to write this book? What I found interesting is that it's about writing specifically your first screenplay, and it's based. From what I read in the book, it's really based on how you taught at UCLA.
That's exactly right. In the early 2000s, UCLA Extension had online classes, and I taught one of those classes. And at that time, there was no Zoom, there was no Skype, so there was no video. So we had to post everything online, and I had to post my lectures online, and then students would read the lectures and post their work, and then post comments on other people's work as well. So one day, one of my former students, who now is a USC professor in screenwriting, said, "Hey, Paul, a lot of your lectures are online. A lot of your video lectures are online. Why don't you just have them transcribed and put out a book of those?" And I said, "That's an interesting idea, but boy, that would be a lot of work." Uh, and I don't like to
Yeah.
do that much work. But then I remembered that I did all these lectures for UCLA Extension in the early 2000s. So I gathered those up and organized them, updated them because some of the lectures were a little out of date, and my thinking has changed, has progressed since then, as all good thinking should. And I put
Now,
them
how
all
how
together.
how have how have things changed, and how has your thinking progressed since then? What's the difference?
Well, that's a good question. Well, at first I started off with just a basic three-act structure because I had read Sid Field and I thought, this is the way it goes. But as I developed my thinking over the years, I realized that there were more than just three acts, and he divides them actually into four, by having the midpoint in the second act. And I thought, there really are 7 points that are really important in a screenplay. And so I developed that, and I thought more about some of the characterizations and the other subplots that are going on in every story. And also, I thought about the antagonist. Most people will ignore the antagonist when you're talking about screenwriting.
Yeah.
That the antagonist actually has a story of his own or her own, and you really need to understand what the antagonist wants and what the antagonist needs. And so, as I was thinking about these things, I developed them and I restructured my lectures and my talks and my viewpoints and the way I taught things. And so I had to revise my lectures from the UCLA
Uh,
Extension lectures. So they're up to date. Also, I put in newer references so that they're not all movies from the 90s or the early
right.
2000s. So we've got Coda and we've got Barbie and we've got other films like
How
that.
how important do you think Sid Field was at the beginning, and is what Sid came up with the whole three act structure. I mean, do you think that still holds true today?
Well, actually, Sid didn't come up with that. That Aeschylus came,
Okay.
Sophocles,
In Hollywood, Sid
Aristophanes.
came up with it. Yeah.
Yeah, he named it.
He named it.
He named it for the movies. Yeah, and it still applies, but it's you have to expand that a little bit more. His
Yeah.
definition of the three-act structure was very good, but it was not complete in my
Yeah.
way of thinking. So, and things have changed. Movies have changed since he came up with that idea. Star Wars was created, and Star Wars is based on a 12-point structure,
Yeah.
which is basically Joseph Campbell's structure that he discovered in Hero with a Thousand Faces. This is because people have been telling stories for at, at least 3,000 years, but probably much longer than that, that
Yeah.
all have very, very similar structure. And Campbell said it, and then Sid Field pointed out that in movies it's this way, and I'm pointing out that in movies it can be any way, but these are the ways that are good to start with.
Well, and one of the things I love about the new book is I think you sort of encompass all of these methods in this book. That you don't just talk about story structure or character development or genres. It's sort of all encompassing.
That's correct. Well, because there's no one way to skin a cat, there's no one way to write a movie. There are lots of different ways to make it work. As long as you, well, as a new writer, you should start out using the traditional form just so that you can get a hold of it.
Yeah,
And then you can start doing things that are different. For example, Christopher Nolan's Memento was told in reverse in the color version of the story, and in
yeah,
the black and white version of the story, it's told in from beginning to end. So you have two ways of telling the story in the same movie, but
yeah.
even so, there are the 7 points discovered in there. So you can tell your movie whatever way you want to do it, but as long as it works.
How have you seen movie making and screenwriting change? Like, you have today you have Succession, The Bear, Oppenheimer, Barbie. How does that compare to the movies that were made in the 70s? Taxi Driver, Star Wars, Alien.
Well, I think people are taking more chances now in terms of structure. They
Yeah,
took a lot of chances in the 70s in terms of theme and in terms of content, but now we're taking more chances in terms of structure. For example, Everything Everywhere All at Once. Who knows what the structure of that is?
right. Yeah,
It's all over the place. But actually, if you really examine it, it does have the 7 points. They're just not necessarily in the places where you would expect them.
right.
So, these days, I think people are taking more chances. Certainly in television, that's a whole different story. You can do almost anything you want to do in television
Yeah.
because people are not expecting um, the 7 act or the 7 points or the 3 acts, however you want to call it, in the 90 minutes to 2 hours. They're expecting something, a storytelling, and usually now 8 episodes, 8 hours of a story. You have a lot of room to do all kinds of different things and go off the track. But if you would take the whole season worth of 8 episodes and look at them, you'll probably find your 7 points in that.
Yeah. Do a lot of times in those shows, like The Bear, I mean, people love The Bear. I don't necessarily get it. There just seems to be a lot of artsy fartsy camera work in The Bear. I mean, am I missing something? Are you that familiar with The Bear that
Oh yeah, I
you
am
might be able
familiar
to
with the bear. I
can you
would
explain this to me why people love this show so much?
well, I'm not exactly sure why people love the show so much, but
Yeah.
uh, it takes a lot of chances and it focuses on a lot of different things. I was very disappointed with the last season of The Bear, actually,
Yeah.
because it was very artsy fartsy. It was very self-indulgent, I thought, and it
Yes.
and it didn't have a lot of story. It didn't have a lot of story. What it did have was a lot of character, so that was
Yeah.
interesting. It explored character a little bit more deeply, but it didn't tell you any new things about the story, about the progress of the restaurant or about the bear's progress.
Well, that leads me to actually lesson one of your book, which is about premise, character, and conflict. Can
Yeah.
you, as a starting point, where do you go with those items?
Well, it's great that you call them starting points. When you're starting to think about a film, about writing a film, there are three ways to start it. One is you have a character in mind. You want to write a film about that character. Okay, fine.
Yeah,
Maybe you have an idea in mind. Maybe your idea is love conquers all, even death. Maybe you have a situation in mind. Um, I'm just thinking maybe a ship sinks in the ocean after striking an iceberg. So you have these three characters, you have these three ideas, but you don't really have a story yet. And so what you can start with each one of those, and then you have to develop all three of those and a story to make that work. So if you have a character, you have to have a situation and you have to have a premise. That is what is the theme, what is the idea of your movie. And then you have to figure out what the story is. So what does your character want? And what does your character need? And what is your character doing to get to those things? And what is the barrier to those goals? And then you work out the situation and you work out the rest of the story.
Yeah, because that's one of the things I like that you talk about matching the characters to the premise.
Mhm.
And so if you have characters, if you fall in love with an idea for a character, but it doesn't work in coordination with the premise or the story, how much can that hurt your screenplay?
Well, you can either hurt it completely or not at all. And that sounds contradictory, but here's the thing. If you discover, and this happens all the time, if you discover that in writing your story, your character doesn't work out for your premise, or your premise doesn't work out for the story, you can change the premise. You have that possibility. You have that right. You can
Yeah,
do that. And if you find out that your character doesn't fit the premise or the premise doesn't fit the story, there's no reason why you can't change one or the other. I've also discovered, I wrote a script with Mark Scheffler a while ago, and we discovered, oh, I would say in the second draft, maybe the third draft, that the person we thought who the protagonist was not the protagonist at all. It was
now what
somebody
how
else.
now how'd you figure that out?
Well, we were reading it over and we thought, wait a minute, this is not this person's story. The
Yeah,
real person who changes, the real person who goes through the suffering and all the barriers is this other person. Even though we wanted it to be somebody else, it didn't work out that way. You know, sometimes stories write themselves. It's
yeah,
it's a hard thing to describe, but you know it when you do it. When you're writing, sometimes characters speak to you and they tell you things that you didn't know.
yeah,
And when that happens, you just have to follow that character. And sometimes that character will tell you, well, no, this is not my story. It's my lover's story, or it's my
yeah.
father's story. It
Now
happens.
when you now when you say are your characters characters, what does that exactly mean?
uh, I'm looking for characters that are different, that stand out. And to stand out, you have to be a little bit different. You know, you can have the milquetoast characters, you can have the everyday characters. You see them on TV all the time. You see tropes all the time, the same characters over and over again. I want to see somebody that's a little different,
Yeah,
somebody that has a little quirk, especially when we're talking about supporting characters, because those are the people that make your screenplay sparkle.
yeah,
They make you, oh, that's interesting. Who's that guy? Why did he do that? That's interesting. Why does he only have one arm? What's going on there? I mean, something that will wake up your reader and then later on your viewer. So that's why I like to have characters that are different.
and then I'm a big fan of comedians. I love watching comedy. I go to the comedy store all the time. I go to the improv all the time because I'm so fascinated by how a comic picks and chooses the words for a
Mm.
joke and how important word choice is. And one of the things you talk about in the book is word choice. How does that apply when you're writing your screenplay? How important are the words you choose?
Well, that's a big question because there's two kinds of writing in your screenplay. One is writing your action, and the other one is writing your dialogue. So when you're writing your action, you want to be very terse, you want to be very clear, you want to be very specific, you want to be
Ah, yeah, yeah, yeah,
you want to move fast. So you want to have short paragraphs, you want to have short sentences, you want to, have a strong pulse. When you're
yeah,
writing your characters, on the other hand, you want to be true to the character's nature. So you need to understand who your characters are. That
yeah.
means you have to write a good biography of your characters, really get into their souls, actually. And you want to have your characters sound different from each other. If they all sound the same, then you're not writing characters.
Yeah.
You have to listen to your characters. If you created them uh, with your biographies and you made them succinct and different, then you'll know that they'll speak in different ways. And that's what I mean by word choice. If you choose those words carefully, your characters will sing. I mean, they will just they'll jump off the page. And that's what we
And
want to see.
and how do you find the authenticity of a character in the dialogue? I mean, are there methods, are there tips that you could give that people can find an authentic voice for each of their characters?
Well, that's a good one. There are two ways to do that, and you have to use both ways. One is to develop a very, very clear biography of your character. That means understanding the physiology, the sociology, and the psychology of the character.
Now, do you write all of that down, or is that just in your head?
Oh, you write it all down. I think
Yeah,
it really helps to write it all down so that you have it on paper and you can refer to it.
yeah,
Uh, then you have to think about the situation that the character's in and how your character would respond. But actually, I just jumped over something else that I meant to say was you have to listen to people. And you have to go to places where people are talking and listen to them and pretend you're not listening. Of course, you have to pretend, but you listen to the people and you listen to the characters that you're writing. If you can
yeah,
find if you're writing about boxing, you should probably go to some boxing matches and you should listen to boxers and people talk about boxing. If you're writing about Formula One racing, you should go to Formula One races and listen to people talk about Formula One, get the lingo.
yeah.
If you don't know those characters really well and you don't know their situations and their milieu, then you don't know those characters well enough to write about them. So listening is important in creating the character. And then eventually they start talking to you. When you start writing their dialogue, they'll start talking to you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I feel like it's almost like a Theo Von question here that it's almost like the characters are in your head and they're literally talking to you in your head.
Yeah, exactly. You're transcribing at a certain stage. You
Yeah,
know what the scene is about, you know the conflict of the scene, and then you set your characters free and they start talking to you and you're just writing it down.
I love that idea that you're just transcribing what they're telling you.
If that works, I mean, if it doesn't happen to you, then you haven't developed your characters well enough. So
Okay,
you need to go back and you have to think through your characters. What does this character really want? Who is this character? Why does he want this? And why does he need something else? Because that's also very important. And I think one of the things that people forget about is the character's flaw. What is wrong with your character? Why is the character not living his or her perfect life? And that is because of their character flaw. They're greedy, they're self-centered, whatever it is.
do you feel that a character has to change in a good story?
I think that is what a good story is. If a
Yeah,
character doesn't change in a good story, there's no good story. That's what we go to movies to see. We want to see a character that we can empathize with or sympathize with and we can understand with that is leading a life that's perhaps not perfect and they need to make some adjustments. And then we need to see them working hard to achieve their goals. And
yeah.
if we see them do that, then we can empathize with them. We can get into the story with them. We can hope for them. We can root for them. And that's what we want to see in a movie. We want to root for those characters.
And then also in the first part of the book, you talk about layers. Can you sort of explain that?
Well, when we meet a person, we see what they look like, but we don't really see who they really are. So that we start talking to them and we discover that somebody that's just wearing a t-shirt and jeans might be a PhD in physics. We don't know, but we have to learn a little bit more about that person. And I think as we talk with that person, we find, well, not only are they a PhD in physics, but they grew up in Alabama on a farm. And then we
Yeah.
find out that something else happened to them and something else. So the more we learn about that character, the more we like that character, the more that we empathize with that character, the more we want that character to succeed. And that's why when we watch a movie, we want to see as many layers of that character as possible because we want to see that character succeed.
Now, do you layer all of the characters similarly, or are the main characters obviously have more layers? And, do you have one-dimensional characters? Is there value in one-dimensional characters in a screenplay?
Well, yeah, there's the cop number one that's standing in the corner, and he's just standing there watching your prisoner, and the prisoner is the most important character in that scene. Or
Yeah,
you have nurse two, or you have waitress three. They don't have to have big personalities, but if they do have a personality, if they do say something, just one line sometimes, they stand out. Do you remember the Bronson Pinchot character in Beverly Hills Cop?
I'm fine. My name is Serge, and how can I help you?
Yeah, I'm looking for Miss Jenny Summers.
It's very busy today. Maybe you give me your name?
My name's Axel Foley.
And what it's pertaining?
I didn't understand what you said.
Pertaining, what it's meaning, regarding.
Oh, what's it regarding? I'm an old acquaintance of hers.
Danae? One moment. Don't run and tell Miss Summers that Mr. Ahmed Foley is here to
No,
see...
Axel Foley. Axel.
Achwell
Axel.
Foley is here to see her. He's an old acquaintance. Donnie, this cover this up. It's
I'm
like
sorry.
the
I'm
breast
real
of
sorry.
a dog to scrub.
Of course.
All right, you remember that character. That
Yeah.
character stood out. He didn't have a big part. He was only in that one scene, but he stood out, and you remember that character. That's
And it's
important.
and it's funny because he said that he was a nobody when he took that role. And the day that movie came out, his entire life changed. And he couldn't believe it because, like you said, he was barely in that movie.
Right. Because he created a character. I don't know what I never read that screenplay, but I don't know how much was pointed out in that screenplay, but I hope there was something pointed out that he had a weird accent, that he acted a little strange. And then that made his life.
Yeah.
That changed his life. And that changed that movie too. We remember that. You and I haven't seen that movie in 20, 25 years, but we remember that one character.
You still repeat the accent, you still repeat the mannerisms,
Exactly.
which is very funny.
Yeah.
Now, in the book, you sort of divided between course one and course two gets into works in progress, where you talk about time to tweak the screenplay. You want people to read the screenplay. What do you recommend when people are in the middle of a work in progress that they do?
As we do in a class, we read pages as they come out. And I think it's great for a writer to develop a writer's group. If he can find two or three or four people of like-minded in about the same area, about the same level of competency or
Yeah,
better. It's always better to find people that are a little better than you are in a group. That will really help the writer as they're developing their pages. Because we know when we start off writing the script, every writer starts off writing it one way. And by the end of the script, it's not the same kind of style. Not every character sounds a little bit different than they did at the beginning. So you need to have a constant uh, input as you're
yeah.
writing to keep your characters consistent and to keep your stories consistent and to remind yourself that you must have conflict in every scene, every single scene. And
And
yeah, go ahead.
go ahead, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, and the writers in your group remind you of that. And if they're good, I mean, it's one thing to have your mom read your script or your girlfriend or your boyfriend. Uh,
Right.
that's great, and they'll give you some feedback, but it's absolutely useless because they don't know the process. They don't know how to do things. But if you have somebody that's already working on something that's a little farther along than you are, possibly in the writing process, that's really helpful.
Yeah.
And the book gives you some direction in that and tells you what to talk about in some of those groups and gives you assignments at the end of every chapter. So it's very much like a class. As a matter of fact, I think this is a syllabus for a high school or junior college class taught by an English teacher that's never written a script, but has students that want to write scripts. And so they
Yeah.
don't know what to do with it. They take the book and they go, oh, okay, if I do everything that they say in the book here in my class, I'm going to have a class in screenwriting. And maybe I'll actually write a screenplay.
Well, I think what I love about the book is I think that a lot of people have the idea, they think they have a story, they want to write a screenplay, but it almost seems too daunting that I'm going to come up with 90 pages. And I think that you sort of help demystify that okay, if I follow these steps, if I take it step by step, I can work my way through making this happen.
Well, that's a good point of view. Uh, it's a lot like building a building or a house. You don't just throw up a house.
Yeah.
You have to have a blueprint. And before you have once you have a blueprint and you do the blueprint step by step. You write a blueprint of the foundation, you write a blueprint of the walls, the framing, everything. And when you build a house, you do the same thing. You make the foundation, then you make the walls, then you make the roof, then you do the interior. You do things step by step. Otherwise, you get stuck.
Yeah.
Writing a film is the same way. We build a film. Some people say that we build screenplays. And if you do it step by step, it's the easy way. Otherwise, if you just sit down and you start with a blank piece of paper, or you start with a blank screen and you start writing, you don't know where you're going. You don't know what you're
Yeah.
doing. You're stuck and you get writer's block. But if you follow the process that I outline in the book, you go step by step. You take it one step at a time. Sometimes you have to go back and check it over again, but that's fine. You do that, and then you take the next step, and then the next step. And by the time you sit down and you're actually writing the screenplay itself, it flows. It's a lot easier. There's no such thing as writer's block by that time.
I was just going to say, I think your book actually helps people overcome writer's block. It helps them overcome the fear of writing that screenplay.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Writer's block is something that I had never had, I have to say. Um, Partly because when I was a young man, I was a journalist, and I had a
Ah,
deadline.
okay.
I had a deadline at 4 o'clock every day, not 4:01, but four
Yeah.
o'clock. And if you didn't meet that deadline, you were screwed.
Yeah.
So, but I understand that. And also working in television, the first work I had in television, I had to turn out a 20-page screen, no, a 12-page screenplay every single day. And
Wow.
yeah. Later on, I got another job and I can't tell you this because it was a non-union job, but I had to do three of those every day. And there was no waiting around to come to have inspiration. You just had to write. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, I had research that was supplied to me and I could work off the research. But the thing is, if you have it, if you follow the steps and you do it this way, it guides you so closely that you don't ever have to worry about what to write next.
Would you recommend when people read your book that they give themselves deadlines or goals to complete each lesson?
Yeah, that's a really good question because people should give themselves deadlines. But let's be realistic about this. Most people that are reading this book don't have full time to read this book and write.
Yeah.
They're going to be working, let's say 40 hours doing something, 40 hours a week. So when are they going to write? So I have suggestions here as to how to prepare yourself to write. And one of those would be to first find a place where you can write, where you can have quiet. And I would say probably just for an hour a day, because that's all you can really spare if you're working 40 hours a week at whatever you're working at, physical labor, mental labor, whatever it is. And have a place where you can be uninterrupted for 1 hour a day. Now that could be in the morning before you go to work. That can be in the evening after you've had your dinner. If you've got a family, you have to deal with your family and you have to be there for your family. But you have to say, look, I need 1 hour after dinner to work on my screenplay, or I need 1 hour before you get up in the morning when I'm in the kitchen by myself. I need that 1 hour to be quiet and to write. And if you
Yeah.
do that every day, you can write while you're working and doing something else. And it's going to take you a longer time to do it,
Oh,
but
hold
that's
on.
why this is set up so that it takes place over a year. Um, the three sections of the book are really 3 quarters of the UCLA screenwriting year. And if
Yeah.
that takes a year, well, actually, it takes 9 months. But let's say it takes a year. And if you follow a chapter a day or a chapter a week, you'll get there. It's just going to take you a little time.
And I love that that's such a realistic goal. And I think it's true with anything that's important. If being a screenwriter or a TV writer is important to you, that hour is not going to be a big deal for you to put aside. And you have to put that aside.
Right. You're right. And now it's funny. My daughter tells me that one of her earliest memories is her bedroom was right next to my office. And one
Yeah.
of her earliest memories is falling asleep listening to the computer keys, the keyboard keys as I was typing. Because after dinner and after I put her to bed and read her a story, I would go into my office and I would write.
What a great visual that is. The
Yeah.
kid sleeping and the keys in the bed. And so how important would you say collaboration is? I know that you collaborate, you co-write with people. Do you think that if people, well, what's the value in it, I guess? Let me ask that first.
Well, there's two kinds of collaboration. One is collaborating in a classroom, so you have feedback from other people, and that's
Yeah.
very valuable. Or collaborating with a writers group, and that is very helpful. The other kind of collaboration is writing with a partner, and that takes a special kind of collaboration. You have to understand what are your strengths and weaknesses, and what are your partner's strengths and weaknesses, and then you work with those, and it gives you instant feedback as you go along. I mean, I've written with several partners in several different ways. One partner, we would sit down and one person would be at the keyboard, and it didn't matter who was at the keyboard. Uh, and the other person would be pacing in the background, which is what writers like to do.
Yeah.
And we would be talking through the story and then typing the story and then going back and reading it out loud again and then going back and making some changes and then typing the next part of the story. And that works really well. With another partner, what I've done is we talk through the story, and then one partner writes the first scene, the other partner rewrites the first scene, then another partner writes the second scene, the other partner rewrites the second scene. So it's a different kind of a process, but it works well because it's instant feedback. And
Yeah.
it's so you're not writing into a void. You're not writing and thinking, does anybody like this? Is this any good? You don't know. If you have a partner, you know right away, is it work or not? Now,
Yeah.
I had a partner when I was writing for sitcoms, Jeremy Bertrand Finch, uh, great funny guy. And we would write and we would decide if we didn't both laugh at the joke, we toss it.
Yeah.
We would both have to laugh. Now, I had another partner, Mark Scheffler, who I still work with from time to time, and he's one of the funniest men alive. And he can just pull out a joke out of air. So
Yeah.
we could be writing a story, and I would say, "Look, we need a joke here on page 5, right in the middle there. What do you got?" And he would just kind of roll his eyes back into his head and come out with a joke like that. It's amazing.
Yeah.
He could. He said, "I can pull it. It's like they're floating around in the air, and I can just pull one out."
That's great.
It's incredible. It's incredible. He's a
That's
very
great.
funny guy.
Well, I want to ask you, because I've talked to so many writers recently, and you see all these articles about the state of where the industry is in writing and whatnot. And, a lot of people like to say, well, the quality of writing has declined, which I don't know if I necessarily agree with. And
Yeah.
I wrote some notes that I wanted to go through and get your thoughts on it, which
Okay.
is that do you think that the quality has changed because of talent, or is it more about the industry and the economics and the algorithms of the way the industry is now?
Well, I think the quality of writing is there's a scale, there's a spectrum of the
Yeah,
writing. And because we had so much writing in, say, the early 220s, when we had so many streamers grasping for material wherever they could get it, and when we had something like 500 or 600 series going at the same time, there was just too much writing going on, and it was too fast, and too many people that weren't seasoned writers were writing for shows. So sometimes the writing was not of the best quality. I think it's getting back to better quality now. We're
yeah,
watching some shows that are very funny. For example, The Paper. I don't know if you've
yeah,
seen that yet. It's a
yes,
very funny show. It's the writing that's doing it. The acting is also good, obviously, but the writing is what is the basis, the foundation of that show. And you
yeah,
see that in other shows too. The shows that are coming out, they're not as pressed for time. There aren't as many out there, so they have fewer writers. You don't have to bank on the new writer to come up with something. You
yeah.
can use the experienced writer, so you have better writing.
It's funny because what you said is exactly what the people have been telling me, which is that when all the streamers came in, there was a massive content arms race.
Hmm.
that everybody was trying to get content, that they were looking at quantity over quality, that there were tight deadlines, there was less development time, and a lot of the ideas for those shows were sort of formulaic or underbaked.
Yeah. And that's unfortunate because it was a good thing and a bad thing at the same time. It was a good thing because
Yeah.
it gave a lot of work to writers and it helped some writers get better because when you write, you get better. The more you write, the better you get. Um, but on the other hand, as you said, there were just too many writers, writers that weren't ready to do it, writers that were working on too much pressure, writers that wanted to deliver what the streamers wanted, which was stuff. Just get
Yeah.
stuff on the air. And sometimes that's not a good idea. I mean, sometimes some ideas take time.
Well, and going back to co-writing and collaboration, the other thing that people have been saying is that the writers' rooms are a lot smaller. They're a lot shorter in time.
Yeah,
It cuts down a lot on the collaboration. That the writers don't get to stay with the show or the film through production,
right.
and the strike particularly uh, caused a lot of those issues. That they just didn't have time to collaborate and have these writers' rooms.
Right. That was a problem. You know, we had a similar situation when I was working on the Twilight Zone. I was the story editor of the Twilight Zone. There were only three of us that were working on the story. And one of the problems that happened there was a strike right in the middle of our production. We had only written about 20 episodes by that time, and we had 10 more to go. Um, and they were filming them in Toronto. So we didn't really have a back and forth. We didn't
Yeah,
have collaboration there. And I think some of those episodes suffered because of that, because we couldn't be on the set. We couldn't be there seeing that possibly locations weren't working out or an actor was weak in a particular role and we needed to write around that actor. We couldn't do that. And that's the same thing that's happened with the streamers.
yeah. And then the next one and I love this one because I think this is a lot of people put the blame here, which is the executives and algorithmic influence, that decisions are increasingly data driven, that what does the algorithm say that the audience wants.
Right. Well, if we already knew what the audience wants, we wouldn't have made we wouldn't have made Star Wars.
Yeah, yeah.
We wouldn't have made The Bear. We wouldn't have made a lot of things that appeal to people and that get really popular. We wouldn't have made the Wizard of Oz even. I mean, just think about it. In 1939, they didn't know what the audience wanted. They didn't know that.
Yeah,
And as a matter of fact, the that movie wasn't a big hit. It was a hit, but it
right.
wasn't a big hit. It wasn't until later on when it was on television every year. It was on television a certain time of year. I can't remember when it was, but around Christmas time, I think it was.
Yeah.
Um, it became a huge hit because people now were able to watch it again and again and again and say, oh, yeah, that really hits home. I understand that. There's no place like home, among other things.
How do you feel about the reimagining of the Wizard of Oz at Sphere?
um, well, I've only seen in Sphere. I haven't seen that. I've read about that, and it sounds
Yeah,
fascinating. It's more of an immersive experience now, and I think
yeah.
that's valuable. That's interesting. That's another way of storytelling. You're right there. As I understand it, you feel the wind, you feel the dust, all that stuff. That's kind of interesting. If you smell it, that's even better. I mean, I hope they do. I don't know if they do that, but
They do, and it's to me, it's kind of like people are so afraid it's going to take away from the movie. I don't think it takes away from the movie. I think it's almost like a ride. At Universal
yeah.
Studios, they used to have an ET ride. No one
Mhm.
ever said this ride takes away from how great ET was as a movie.
Right,
So
exactly.
if it introduces new people to that story, and then they start watching the movie year in and year out at home, I see it as a win-win.
Yeah. Anytime you expand a story and you make it more available to people, and you make it more real to people, I think that's a
Yeah,
good idea. There's, and you take, first of all, it was a book, and then
yeah,
it became a movie.
yeah,
So, did that ruin the book? No.
yeah.
We still read the book.
And then how do you think that the shift in audience has changed? That people like to binge watch things, they don't have enough time, they're watching it on their smartphones. I mean, do you see the shift in audience changing storytelling or how storytelling should be approached?
Well, yes, here's one of the issues. First of all, watching things on the phone is completely different now.
Yeah.
Most people don't watch movies on the phone. They watch TikTok on the phone. They watch YouTube videos on the phone. They watch short
Although
things on the phone.
I will say that I just watched Sunset Boulevard for the first time. I watched it on a flight on my phone. And it was just as satisfying watching it on that little screen as it would be watching it to me at least. That
Okay.
I thought that the movie sort of transcended, didn't matter what format I saw it in.
Well, that's very interesting. I would say that it would be even more impactful if you saw it on a big screen, but
Yeah,
because it's so well written and so well acted and directed, it's a classic. I mean, it's one of the great films of all time.
yeah,
You were lucky to see that. I've seen other films on airplanes on my iPad or on my phone, and I'm like, yeah, 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 it needs to be bigger than this.
yeah,
Uh, there's no doubt about it. When you're in a theater and things and faces are 15 feet tall, it has a lot more impact than faces that are a half an inch tall. And I
yeah.
think, yeah, but things that are made for TikTok and things that are made for YouTube are very specific and very short, and they do have impact. They're not necessarily great stories, but they do have impact. And that's,
It's funny. Yeah,
yeah.
because the first time I went to Cosm, I don't know if you're familiar with Cosm here in LA. It's sort of a mini sphere. And I actually went there to go see baseball. And you see this baseball game in this enormous, almost 360 view. And when I first saw that, I said, this is the future of movie making because to immerse yourself in the movie like this, or a
Mm.
TV show or a sports game is unbelievable.
Well, that's what they said about Cinerama.
Oh,
Uh,
yeah, touche. Yeah, that's true.
I don't know if I went to an early Cinerama screening, gosh, in the 50s. It must have been the 50s, where they had three projectors
Yeah,
and we're on a roller coaster. And I thought, whoa, I almost got sick because it
yeah,
was so real.
yeah,
And I was a kid, and I didn't really understand what was going on. Uh, but yeah, storytelling is storytelling, and
yeah,
people need to have full-blown stories. And if you have a full-blown story that you're immersed in, it doesn't matter if you're in a big theater or if you're in one of these globes or wherever you are, as long as the story is real.
yeah,
Even if
yeah.
I guess even if it's on a small phone screen, if the story is real and speaks to you and the characters speak to you, you're going to get into it. Even if you're on an airplane. I mean,
Yeah,
I've been on an airplane and got really into the story,
yeah.
even stories that I wasn't interested in. Or I got into a story the other day. Well, two of my students have written a story now that is the most popular movie on Netflix ever. And this is K-pop. What
Oh,
is it?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, the K-pop movie. And it's not a movie that I would normally have gone to see, but
right.
I watched it, of course, because my students wrote it, and I
Yeah.
watched it, and it pulled me right in because,
Wow. Okay.
yeah, it first of all, it follows the 7 points, uh, and it has interesting characters. It has characters with a flaw, and it has a point of view. It has a premise. It has everything that you're looking for in a movie, and it's animated, and it has music. It's wild.
It's something I would never watch, but now that I know your students wrote it, I got to watch this movie.
You should watch it. It'll pull you in. It's strange. And not only is it the number one movie that they've ever had, it's the number one movie for the number of weeks that it's been on the top.
Yeah,
So it's huge and it's going to change their lives. And I'm very happy for them.
that's amazing. So Paul, what do we conclude? That the talent is still there, that great storytelling will always lift TV and film to new heights and have an audience, and that you are the screenwriting sensei, and people should go buy this book, and and then they can have the next big hit on Netflix or in the theaters or on TV or wherever it is.
Things should happen like that. Yes, I appreciate
Yeah,
that. Thank you very much. You're right. It's all about the story. It's all about the people. It's all about the theme. If you have those things, you have a movie. And if you have a good movie, people will watch it. And even if they don't watch it now, they'll watch it later on when
Yeah.
it comes on streaming, or they'll watch it down the road when they're in an airplane. They'll watch it because they've heard about it. And people will tell them, you've got to watch this because this character's so great or this story is so good. It's all about the story.
Well, Sunset Boulevard, it's been around for 75 years. First time I've seen it, totally blown away by it.
Wow. It's great.
You
It's a
know,
great
great.
experience to have. Yeah.
Well, Paul, this has been a complete pleasure. People, please go buy The Screenwriting Sensei. It's a great book. Paul is an amazing teacher, and I guarantee you, you will not be disappointed. Paul, always a pleasure to see you. Always a pleasure to talk to you.
Great to talk to you too. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate the dialogue that we had.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And for the Pulse of Story, I'm Derek Christopher, and we will see you next time.